I will now call to order the June 20th, 2024 Board of Education meeting. We acknowledge the traditional ancestral unceded territory of the Chumash, Tongva, Fernandeño, Tatavaim, and First Nations on which we are learning, educating, and living. Dr. Knapik, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening? Thank you. If you're able, please rise.
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Ms. Quinterio, please take the roll call at this time.
Member Ferguson? Member Ferguson is absent today. Member Tabbitt?
Yes, present.
Clerk Ponser Kamkar?
Present.
Vice President Nagakanian?
Present.
President Weisberg?
Present. We will adjourn tonight's meeting in the memory of Ron Morris. Ron was a cherished member of the Burbank community and a celebrated athlete, passing away on May 31st at the age of 89. Ron graduated from John Burroughs High School in 1953. His athletic skills shone brightly as he excelled in track and field, particularly in the pole vault. Ron competed for the USC Trojans, track and field team, where his talent and dedication earned him national recognition. He won 3 national titles in pole vault, achieving these remarkable feats in 1958, 1961, and 1962. His legacy as an athlete is marked by his unwavering commitment to excellence and his outstanding achievements on the field. After retiring from competitive sports, Ron devoted his life to nurturing the talents of young athletes as an athletic coach at Cal State Los Angeles. His guidance and mentorship have left a permanent mark on many, inspiring them to strive for greatness in their own athletic endeavors. Ron Morris will be deeply missed by the Burbank community, where his contributions and presence were highly valued. His legacy as both a remarkable athlete and a dedicated coach will continue to inspire future generations. He is survived by his family, friends, and all those whose lives he touched through his passion for sports and his commitment to helping others achieve their best. The Burbank community joins in mourning his loss and celebrating the incredible legacy he leaves behind. It's okay. Moving to item 5, reporting on closed session. There is nothing to report as the item that we voted on is in the consent agenda. Item 6, does anyone have any adjustments to the current agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 7, items for future agendas. Ms. Tabbitt.
Yes, Dr. Weisberg.
Madam.
I am asking that part of board policy is to review our GATE programming, which we have not
Great.
done in quite a few years.
Great. That's wonderful.
So could we please have a report and discussion about where our GATE program is and what they do?
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Is this what's the timing nature of this request? Urgency?
Within the next couple of months, I would think. Let me turn my sound off.
Sure. I have something, and timeline, I don't know, next couple of months. I'm just interested in an update on where we are with Prop 28 funding. I know we have one thing on the agenda tonight, but just a general sense of how we're doing. I know that's been tricky, and I'm excited to hear where that money has been utilized.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I want to say one thing about the GATE master plan. Yeah. I am happy and excited, honestly, to work on that. I want the board to understand that the person that was normally in charge of the GATE program would have been Dr. Young, and so I'm going to need to work with district staff to figure out how we're going to fill in for that. And I would also say that usually a master plan includes participation from the community. So we can definitely start working on it immediately. It might take more than a couple months, but we will be able to report progress to the board whenever we can.
It's not redoing the master plan. It's overviewing our programs that the master plan says we need to have.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
It does.
You may not need a whole committee.
Got it.
We just may need to look at what we're doing.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. We will move on to 8, reports from board and staff. 8A, it does not look like we have representatives from BTA, CSE, or BASA. I hope they're enjoying a well-deserved chunk of vacation time. We'll move to 8B, reports from the superintendent.
Thank you. I'd love to give the community an update on some projects we are working on this summer. The painting project at John Burroughs High School is about 97% complete. If you haven't seen it, please go by and take a look at it. It looks amazing. At Huerta, Jefferson, and Miller, we will start to begin ADA compliant door locks and hardware. That should take a couple weeks to get finished. We'll start that at the end of June. Disney will have an installation of a new ball wall. That work will start in July after summer school is over. The flooring in the library at Disney is 100% complete. It looks amazing. We are currently working on the ADA ramp from the lower playground to the upper campus area at Roosevelt. That is only about 12% completed, but that is a huge project. So it should be done before school starts. And Miller, the 2-story building with the moisture issues, we're about 30% complete. I want the community to understand, because this has become a question from some of our residents in terms of how we're funding that. So I just want everybody to understand that this is the leftover money from the previous bond, and we are doing these projects because they were slated as bond projects, and we're using those bond dollars and exhausting that budget. So this is not coming out of the general fund, and I wanted you all to know that. Thank you.
I was about to ask you for clarification on where that money was coming from, and I appreciate you reading my mind, sir. Ms. Tabbitt.
Can I make a comment, please?
Of course.
A couple Saturdays ago, I drove by Burroughs and freaked out because I thought, oh my goodness, those colors, what are we doing? That's terrible. And I called Mr. Maxwell, who is an amazing human being, and he said, just give it another week or so. You're going to see it looks great. Mr. Maxwell, I was wrong. I was wrong. That high school looks amazing. The colors are beautiful. Well done, sir. Well done. I'll admit when I'm wrong. I was wrong.
And as someone sitting next to her, when she expressed her deep-seated concern over the color,
You have to see this.
we did take a detour from the Realtors Association pancake breakfast. Yeah. Okay. We're going to move to 9A, public communication on agenda items. Any individual or group representative present this evening may address the Board of Education on any agenda item or on any subject within the jurisdiction of the school board by completing a white request card and turning it in to Ms. Quinterio. Speakers are requested to state their name prior to speaking to the board. Not more than 5 minutes may be allotted to each speaker except by unanimous consent of the Board of Education. The superintendent may refer the matter to the proper department for review. The district is providing alternatives to in-person attendance for viewing and participating. We do not have any virtual speakers this evening, so we will move on to our first card. I have 3 this evening. It's about the number of people that are here. First one is Schlossman, he, him, followed by Annie Markarian. And lastly, Miss Britta Maslick.
Good evening, everybody. I just read Miss Makarian is running for school board, and I read that she's an attorney too, and she's pretty sharp. I like her, and a wonderful leader, and I think she's definitely got all my votes. Okay, 12I on your agenda. I talked about it 2 weeks ago, and I had asked, how much are you spending on this? You pulled the item, it's back tonight. And there's still no answer in that thing, and it's a shame. You're going to vote on something and you don't know the exact amount of what you're voting on. I put it at around $50,000, but I can't be sure because I don't know if you're paying for the $1.89 a month when their employees are here or not here. I don't know how you run a school board and not know what you're voting on. It's amazing. This is the longest consent agenda I've ever seen of any meeting I've ever been to, and I think your staff does it on purpose. There's no way to discuss it, and there's no way to agenda it. You'd agendize it properly, you'd get out of here at 2 in the morning if you talked about all the things that you needed to talk about. And if you add up the millions of dollars you're spending in this consent agenda, it should give you pause, and you should hold staff to task on this. Did y'all get this postcard in the mail from the Water and Power? It says our rates are going up $236 a year. That's before you turn the light switch and before you use the water. $236. And that's concerning to me. And I was at the meeting when they allowed Water and Power to issue the bonds, and they did it without any discussion. And if my memory's right, it was $80 million. Okay. Ms. Tabbitt, I'm holding a sign here. You took offense to my sign last time. It says, rip-off school bond not needed. Vote no. 818-442-8118. That is my phone number, and I invite anybody to call me and discuss what a rip-off this bond is. Okay. You're the longest-serving person here with the most seniority. So, I hold you accountable for all the poor decisions that you've made, more than 10 years worth, and there's a ton of them. Okay, and you did not keep your word, Ms. Tabbitt. You told us you weren't going to support this bond if it yielded an increase in our taxes, and it does. It's going from 0.043 to 0.055, and if you do the math, that's a 26% increase. And this is not a continuation. This is a brand new bond. It is a new tax, and we've been generous to the school district, and we've given you 2 bonds already, and you've mismanaged it, Ms. Tabbitt. You said that you're accountable, and you say you're sorry. You should say you're sorry for what you've done to this school district. I stood here and I participated in the Perkins Eastmans. I went to the meetings. You didn't. You were not there when they went around the room and asked people what they wanted. The $512,000 that you spent on that report was a waste. Items like the AC and the roofs were not even in the top 10 of things that needed to be done. The report was hundreds of pages of fluff and filler. Even the president said she learned more about hinges than she ever wanted to know. It was hundreds of pages of filler. And Cantwell said he wasn't happy with the report. That's what he told me. He was disappointed. And I was too. You held a meeting where you went around the room and you asked people for wants. And many of those wants are now in the report, and they're not needs, they're wants. How nice it is to get $450 million and make us spend $1.1 billion for things that don't need to be spent. And that's why I use the word rip-off, because that's what this thing is. I talked to Maxwell, I talked to Paramo. I said, show me. I'm the one person who wants to see, who's interested to see where the needs are, and they will not show me. They will not give me the tour, and you should please stop inviting people on tours, because I sent you a very polite email accepting your offer of going to a class, and you didn't even respond to my email. So, in your own words, Ms. Tabbitt, in response to Mr. Becky, you said $10,000 is nothing to an organization of this size. And it is. Is it, you can huff and puff like you're doing, but you said these things. I was sitting here when you said it. So it's not possible to spend your problems away. Less students means you need a smaller school district. Deal with it.
Ms. Markarian, and then Ms. Maslick.
Good evening. Annie Markarian, 30-year Burbank resident, here to comment on item 12N, approval of the local indicators. First, I want to express my sincere commendation for the impressive goals that were set for the 23 and 24 school year. It is evident that these goals are rooted in a commitment toward enhancing educational experience for all students. I would recommend that as you establish your 24 and 25 goals, you take into consideration the significant concern that the community has over school safety and include a more comprehensive communication plan as part of your school safety plan. Okay, so that said, while it's great to see full implementation of programs that further the district's goals, it seems as though the results are not yet fully reflected in the students' progress, which makes me question whether the scales being applied, with 5 being full implementation and sustainability, is the appropriate standard to evaluate progress. During the first reading of the LCAP, the district reported that college and career readiness is under 50%. In this current report, proficiency in both mathematics and English is also hovering around 50%. It is important to ensure that strategic efforts and resources that are being invested translate into tangible improvements in student outcomes. Perhaps with continuous evaluation and adjustments of these programs, we can bridge that gap between goal implementation and student achievement. Again, I commend you for setting such thoughtful, impactful goals. However, it is crucial to continually assess and adapt our strategies to ensure that they yield the desired results in student progress. And finally, I do want to recognize and say that it's wonderful that you're journeying tonight on behalf of Ron Morris, a real wonderful man, and how fitting it is that it is on the 52nd anniversary of Title IX, which provided equal access to educational programs and activities such as sports. So I appreciate that.
Ms. Maslick.
Good evening, Board. I apologize for wearing my sunglasses. My reading glasses, or my glasses are in my car, and I drove here from Palm Desert, so I'm just like, because I know that you guys are meeting early tonight, so I didn't have till 7. I wanted to say hello to my husband and my sons who are at home waiting for me for dinner, as many of your people are too. But they get neglected on evenings like this. Anyways, okay. Good evening, Board President Weisberg, Vice President Agakanian, Clerk Ponsar Kamkar, Board Members Tabbitt, and I'm sorry to miss Mr. Ferguson tonight, Superintendent Dr. Paramo, and district staff. My name is Britta Maslick. I've been in the district for 34 years and have been a counselor at Burbank High School for 24 years. I'm addressing the board tonight to clarify comments made at the last board meeting regarding the LCAP funding. I know I've talked a lot about where to cut, specifically 3 different areas. The one was the Hanover study. I have not actually dove into the new LCAP funding, so I don't know what that looks like, but I still wanted to make sure that we're looking at reducing that funding and seeing if, as Ms. Ponsar Kamkar suggested, finding someone else to maybe do that survey for less money. I also wanted to discuss FSA. I wanted to discuss that I am just not in favor and think the district should think about not spending additional funding on FSA at this time, as we are in an educational crisis, and I don't think that's prudent. LCAP funding should be for our EL learners, our foster and homeless youth, and I think that the majority of the FSA funding is not used for that. And so, again, if we want to look at how are we serving that population, we still have, thankfully, to our amazing city, we still, I think, have about $245,000 that is there for mental health services. So just because we as a district are not providing the additional $200,000, $100,000 for counseling and $100,000 for the wellness center, kids will still have opportunity to be seen by therapists and interns. And so I just want to make sure that that is clear to the board and to the public. So it's just not spending additional monies because I think this is not allocating resources as best as we can. I just also wanted to talk about DEI funding because we talked about that, or it was talked about last time. And one of the things that was mentioned is that it's, also to teach us about how to teach neurodivergent students, et cetera. And I just want to reassure district staff and our board that in all teacher preparation programs, in all counseling preparation programs, those are things that your teachers are educated in. Yes, we always can learn more and have different approaches, and I think we're spending about $1 million, or we're slated to spend about $1 million on in-services before school starts. So that money hopefully is going to some of that as well. But what I was talking about is just the DEI stipends that we're looking to pay different people, that we're suspending that for the coming year, not to suspend DEI or what it's doing, super important. So once again, our funding is restored. And I know last time we learned that, I don't know what the COLA is going to be for the second and third year out. Obviously, that hasn't been voted on, but hopefully it'll be more than 1% than it is this year. Maybe there will be funding for these things. I know one of the arguments has been we don't want to cut counseling next year when we don't know what the COLA is and if we're going to have to cut it at that point. But I think cutting back a little bit more in some of these extra programs right now, as you mentioned too, will give us maybe a little bit of cushion if COLA isn't what we hope for next year. As a counselor, I think mental health services are needed and we should have them. I just feel like spending money on that this year through LCAP is not wise. I know that we need surveys. Again, spending the amount of money on those surveys this year is not wise. DEI, absolutely, I believe in it. I think it's important. As you mentioned last time, Dr. Weisberg, we as counselors are frontline with all those things. So it is just, again, where are we spending money this year, and is this the wisest place to spend money? And I just urge you and implore you to make difficult decisions that might not be politically correct as you vote on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our public speakers. Superintendent comments.
Yes, thank you. I would like to address some of the comments that Britta brought up. I think they're very important. We are bringing forward contracts for FSA, and the contracts do include new additional language to address some of the concerns that our stakeholders have had. And I am going to bet that it's going to be a robust discussion with our school board members, and we will make some determinations on whether or not or how those things move forward. Hanover, we're still under contract with them. I have no problem looking for other vendors. At the time, we've been working with Hanover for a long time now. It was a contract that was approved several years ago, and at that time we did go out for a request for proposal, and they were the ones that were chosen. That doesn't mean things haven't changed. So I don't have a problem going back and looking for another vendor for Hanover at all. It's just that the contract's not up yet. I also want to say that I think we're trying really hard to listen to the suggestions, particularly around DEI. The stipends have been reduced, and the amount have been reduced pretty significantly. Part of the issue is that it's compulsory. We have something in our LCAP plan that addresses diversity, equity, and inclusion. As far as the consultant is concerned, I'm willing to take that work on, and I know that Dr. Macias is willing to help me with that. And so that $45,000 we could choose to remove for a consultant, the one we've been using. We don't have to continue that. However, if we are going to put PD together in these areas during that preschool week, we would need someone to do that professional development. So the board last time recommended that we use that to get professional development to give to our teachers during the pre-service week. So a portion of that would be used for it, but it might not be the entire $45,000. I believe it's $45,000. That was for the consultant. That's what I remember in my mind. Ani, I totally agree, particularly with your comments on college readiness. The determining factors for how the state measures that has changed so many times, and I'm trying to adjust to how they're going to measure. I don't feel that what you see is an accurate presentation of progress because it's changed so many times. So we are working hard to understand how we're going to be measured so that we can see that growth, but it's definitely something that that we take seriously, that I take seriously. It's frustrating coming out of COVID to see where our academic scores are and where they were before. before COVID. And what makes it even more challenging, particularly in how we present this to the public, is that we keep getting compared from scores over the last several years. And over the last several years is where we've seen the decline because we were in a pandemic situation for a year and a half. The whole idea about putting that booklet of data points together in January was to say to the public, here's where we are right now today based on these measurements. The goal is that we can look at those against our measurements from the fall, the end of the spring, and that we keep doing that. Because to me, those are more stable and they're starting from a standpoint of where we are today and how we're moving forward. I feel like psychologically, it's really devastating to keep getting compared to 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when there were so many factors that affected our scores. We are trying to look at the data under a more micro lens in terms of special groups and how they're doing and what progress they're being made and what we can do to help that. And one of the things that we are doing that we think are going to help our English language arts scores is to introduce a new phonics program that we have not had into the elementary curriculum, because based on the data, it looks like we need help there. And we are doing that professional development the first week when we get back from school, and the teachers will start implementing that during the year. I'm hoping that we'll see some progress there. Mr. Schlossman, I agree the consent agenda is long. Some of these things aren't open for discussion. Some of them are discipline agreements like the one we did today. Sometimes there are special ed agreements that are talked about in closed session, and they get voted on through the consent agenda. All these contracts that are in here are contracts that were already approved. That's why they're in the consent agenda. But at any time, during the time of approval for consent, any of the board members can pull those items. They can pull those items and say to me, we want you to present it at the next board meeting in open session because we have questions. So, yeah, those are my comments.
Thank you so much. Ms. Tabbitt?
As it was stated, I'm old and have been here for decades. Or at least that's my twist on the words that were said. I remember a time when I first came on the board in the last century, that our test scores, as Ms. Makarian, thank you, stated were probably 10% less. We were doing college and career ready about 40%-ish, but also under a different formula for putting it together. And then listening to you just speak right now, and I think about my career, over the last millennial, apparently, how things have changed in education. So we're back to phonics. So I have 3 children. And my first one, who graduated high school in 2010, got phonics instruction, and the other 2 didn't. When I started teaching, we were using in English language arts whole language or project-based as the current trend is. And then we went directly from, and I'm not talking like 10, 20 years, like in 5 years, that was over and we were using standards-based instruction. You tell them what you want them to know, direct instruction in front of them, and then they put it on a test. Right? And then we said, oh, that was terrible. Let's do that, but let's add the cognitive piece, and we need some thinking skills, right? They need to be able to thought process, not just regurgitate what a teacher's told. And so it changed again, and people freaked out over that. And now we're come full circle back to phonics instruction, which I think is a really great thing. But my point was that education is an ever-growing, ever-changing being. And there's so many factors that go into how to educate our kids the right way or the wrong way. I mean, there's social, societal implications and things that we do and how it works. It's just amazing sometimes how far we do get with the kids, with a constant change, a constant motion of how things roll through. So when I look at my children and my friends' children, and having watched them go through 13 years, and now most of them, because I'm old, have I said that a lot? Are now into their careers, and thank goodness how well they seem to be doing. And even from whatever aspect they've chosen. So my point is, I don't know that we can, and I have to be careful because words can be changed and twisted, but at this point, my thoughts and feelings are there's so many factors that come into what we do. I don't think we're ever going to actually hit on exactly the right one, but still our kids are managing to be successful, whatever that means, successful, right? Because it's individualized for our kids. Pretty much, our kids are going out into the world. I feel, for the most part, the largest percentage of them are doing okay. And I think that is a good thing. Anyway, can we do better? Of course, everybody can always do better. But it's tough. And if there was only one rule that we all had to go through all the time, we'd probably be much, much better at what we do, but there's a constant flux. And I am pretty happy, whether that's an old school of thought or whatever, but with our teachers and our site personnel and what is being offered to our students. Thanks, Mrs. Maslick, for taking time off of your time off to come down and speak again and kind of give us a better understanding of your thought process. It's always good to hear, especially for those that have boots on the ground every day and know what it's like to work with the kids and parents and staff each and every day. You're appreciated. Okay, so I think that's about all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Tabbitt.
You're welcome.
Dr. Agakanian.
Thank you. So I think this issue of college readiness has been brought up several times. And so I think I'm the only person here who's actually a director of one of the directors of the largest community college in California and the largest Hispanic serving college in United States. And I think, again, as Dr. Paramo said it and said it before, the budget is very different. And I worked on a budget for many years at the Speaker's office. It's a very complex process. I mean, there's some news just came out, right? Every 2-3 weeks, there's something coming. And I think people have to not compare a school budget to a city budget or to a business budget. The only thing that comes close to it is a community college because it's paid at the same system, which is per pupil. But also we forget about certain programs out there, and this is back to the conversation during our last meeting where finally our director of finance said it. She said it best. Burbank doesn't get its fair share. I've been saying this for years. We're a perfect middle-class community. So because we're not low-income enough, we also don't qualify for certain programs that do provide college readiness. Programs like Gear Up, programs like CalSOAP. We don't qualify. We have it at where I am, where we go to high schools and talk about students and provide classes. So ultimately, there are a lot of challenges involved here. And I hope that people do their homework and learn a little more about how the education system works. It's a little different. It's not your basic, and trust me, I teach finance and accounting. I know a thing or two about budgets. It's not as simple as looking at a ledger for a company. It's complex and it changes. governor could come back next week and say, you know what, I'm going to change something else, which has been happening a lot lately. It's unfortunate. And I think sometimes people can go easily and talk about, well, you know, you guys are making mistakes here, these numbers don't make sense. It's not that simple. I think our team here and my colleagues, we read this stuff, we meet consistently. We've been doing this for a while. I wish we had an easy answer as just looking at our ledgers. It's not your regular accounting, it's a little bit different because we rely on the state. The state determines where the money comes and goes. The state can take it back. And I've said it many, many times and I'll say it again. You have concerns, meet your legislators, tell them to change the system, or else we will be having these conversations. Is it easy to poke at it? Yes, especially in a budgetary year like we're having, and what's coming next. And then when people come and talk about not passing a budget, a bond, again, I'll say it again. It's not as clear as just writing it's phony. It's not as clear as, you know, we're just stealing from you. But I think one thing also people forget. $1 million from 4 years ago, it's literally $500,000 today. You will be seeing a lot of districts, colleges, school districts bringing forward budgets because what they had relied on, it's basically 50% of, give or take, of what was out there because of cost of labor, but also because of cost of material. So I hope that when people come and speak about these issues, they respect, forget about us, respect faculty and staff here, administration, who work very tirelessly. I deal with a lot of districts at my work. LA Unified, you name it. From Garvey to ABC, I deal with them. I have not seen a team that is so frugal when it comes to saving money. And then for the DEI concerns, I understand there are concerns, but you know what? Some of us, including Dr. Promo, we spent 2 years of meeting almost weekly to put together the DEI plans. And it has done wonders for our district. So again, I hope people start really looking at how they can really get involved, roll up their sleeves, and really come and help us because we need to pass this bond. But also we need people to stop comparing apples to apples. This is orange, it's not an apple. It's very different. Our budgets are very different than a city, a county, even a state. Thank you.
Clerk Ponser Kamkar.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me do a little bit more math. Counting, but math, still math. So let's talk about this agenda a little bit. So first I want to thank staff because I know it is not easy to put together board agendas. And one of the things that is in our 48 consent agenda items, 9 of those are approval of minutes, which I know our friend has asked for. He, him, J.G. Wentworth, whatever kind of nonsense name you want to give yourself. So those are getting approved. So thank you, Cindy Q, for putting those together. I know that's, and Armandi for putting together all of that because I know it's a lot of work as someone who does that for her job for the next 6 days. So of the 48 items on the consent agenda, 9 of them are minutes, 3 of them are field trips, 11 of them are special education, 1 is a student expulsion, 7 of them are memberships or partnerships, which carry no cost, and 24 of them are spending, of which, you know, I wasn't able to do this math in the last 10 minutes, but they're not particularly new. It's awarding a contract for spending that's already been approved, or ratifying a contract that's already been approved. A lot of it is instructional consultants that we need, that's outside of special education, but that is essentially required. So I appreciate that we're not going through each one of those individually in open session to the point that it would likely reduce the public's interest in our meetings, of which it is clearly intense. So, that said, to Ms. Mazik's point, the agreement for Hanover is on consent agenda, right? That is something that I'm planning to pull so we can talk about it, right? Because I do think that it's the costs are out of line with what I've seen in my professional work. Now, to further on that, I don't know that we're able to say, hey, take out, reduce the LCAP amount for research by $60,000, right? We're just not at that point yet because we don't know what our options are. Best case scenario is, hey, we have, now I don't remember the number, we have X amount of dollars set aside for Hanover for research. Maybe we are able to then carry that money over if we're able to save it during the school year to the following year. We know that we're carrying over something like $6,000 or something very, very small to the following year. And so I think any money that we can save on some of these things by digging in deeper, I think is good. But I don't know that we're going to be able to bring back things based on those kinds of changes. We'll talk about the local indicator when we get there. I just want to thank staff because I know it's been we're nearing the end of the school year. I know it's been a lot. And thank you for putting together a comprehensive agenda for us. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Markarian, congratulations on Mr. Schlossman's enthusiastic endorsement for your campaign. I look forward to future conversations, and I think, everybody said it, but I'll repeat it, that metrics are people in our case, and there's an enormous amount of data, information, experience that goes into understanding them. And that's, I don't want to be defensive about it because we have a lot of work to do, but I also know that in the past, 2+ years since COVID, I think we've done an exceptional job of focusing on learning loss, also dealing with, and I don't say dealing in a pejorative sense, but with a huge influx of English learners from Ukraine, Armenia, Russia, who are coming with a ton of different issues and experiences. And so it's not just, the percentage of students who are maybe like 50% above or 60, whatever. It's also recognizing the elements that make it difficult to get back to where we were pre-COVID numbers. And it's not, again, like it's not using COVID as an excuse, but it is recognizing the very permanent damage done. We are dealing with a very different educational landscape, and we're just beginning to learn, and we're just beginning to see the research on how we best approach those things. So I was lucky enough to attend the Principals Institute this past week, which is when all the principals come together. It was secondary and elementary, and listening to the high-level conversations being had about ways to address some of the issues that you highlighted. It was really interesting and lets me know that we have the right people in place to be doing this work and to help move our students forward academically. And again, not for nothing that our numbers are significantly better than surrounding districts, but again, I want to avoid, think about this a little bit. I want to avoid being defensive because I think when you're defensive, it sounds like you're hiding something. And I mean, to Dr. Paramo's point, we published these with the intention of being transparent and having these difficult conversations. So I just want to encourage you to continue to better understand the sort of nuances behind these metrics. And perhaps, look, I get it. It is politically expedient to sort of point out flaws and talk about like where we should be and where we are, and that's totally within your right to do so. But there's an enormous amount beyond just the numbers that I think tell an important story, and I hope that you will continue to pursue that, along with being, critical of the numbers, which you should be. We should all be. It's an important part of growth is to be critical of where you are and work to get to a better place. Ms. Maslick, thank you. Just to clarify, you made a comment about the DEI stipends. I just want to be clear to the public. Those are going to our teacher leaders. They're not going to like outside organizations. And I think that's just helpful for people to know. One of the things that we're doing with Dr. Macias this year is getting a much better sense of the work that our DEI teacher leaders are doing and figuring out, do we need 2? Could we do 1? Do we need them at all? Like, what's happening? And so that is something that we are diving deeply into. And part of the reason we haven't been able to do that sooner is we did not have Dr. Macias. So thankfully, he is back home and he is doing the work. You made a really interesting point about some of the training that our teachers get in regards to special ed. And it's true, but one of the things that I've heard over and over again over the past year and change, both from the special ed department and also teachers and also principals, is that there needs to be a lot more training in regards to IEP and 504 implementation. And it's not to say our teachers are doing a bad job, but it is to say that like there needs to be consistent professional development in these areas, which is why at our last meeting I talked about wanting to use that consultant money to focus specifically on special education and neurodiverse. So you're right. I mean, there's no question people receive that training, and often it happens in pre-service, but it's become very clear that there needs to be more. And I think that this is a population of learners that often gets left out of that conversation when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. And so I hear you. I just don't view them as sort of the extra programs. I view them as sort of fundamental to the work that we're doing. So I appreciate you highlighting. Hanover gave Ms. Ponser-Kamkar the opportunity to bring up that perhaps we can be doing this for less. I'm really grateful to you for that. And I hope that you will continue, moving forward to come engage with us when you have questions about it. It only makes us stronger in our ability to make good decisions, because you will often ask questions that I haven't asked. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So I'm thankful to you for continuing to challenge us, because it's given me the ability to do an even deeper dive. That being said, a comment was made, earlier that we just sort of approve things without going through them. And I can guarantee, anybody who's watching, then I'll only speak for myself, that I read everything. I go through everything, ask about 12 billion trillion questions so that when I come to the board meeting, I'm prepared. It would be dangerous for me to be looking at these things for the very first time. I would be making ill-informed decisions, and I would be taking bad votes if I had looked at it only tonight. So an enormous amount of work goes in, even with those 48 items on consent. Rest assured, I had many questions about multiple items on the consent agenda. But again, to everybody, to all three of you tonight, it's really helpful to hear your questions and concerns, because then it allows us to know often, like, oh, this is what's on them. Because people don't often, sometimes people come to board meetings, but often we don't know what's on somebody's mind, right? And so you coming and speaking is really helpful, because it helps me to think, okay, maybe we need to be doing a different job on how we communicate the metrics, right? Because you've come a couple times to talk about specific things, and it makes me wonder, okay, so should we be talking about it differently? Should we be including different information? So it's really good when you come up here and talk about that, because it allows me to ask myself, is this something that we need, is the story that we're telling, do we need to be telling it differently or including different information? And that goes, Ms. Maslick, with you as well. It's helpful in just thinking about how we're communicating stuff. So Ms. Markarian, Ms. Maslick, I'm thankful to you for that, because it always gives me something to think about. Okay. Moving on. I dropped my pen. Okay, we're going to move to 10, reports to the board. We'll start with 10A, reports on excess reserves. And just to give, Dr. Promo, do you want to give a little context as to how Mr. Cantwell is joining us this evening?
Sure. For the community, I'd like to share with you that Mr. Andy Cantwell, who is in charge of our administrative services, is joining us today. He's got a few reports. He is going to be joining us virtually. And it looks like Andy is on the line, and his first report is on excess reserves. Andy, if you can speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
Oh, mute.
1 second, Andy.
Can you hear me now? Yes. You can? Yes. All right. President Weisberg, board members, Dr. Paramo, colleagues, and community, it's a pleasure to join you this evening. I apologize I'm having to do it remotely. I am joining you from my home office. I do have 4 children who are down the hall, so I never quite know what sounds may be emanating from the background. I apologize in advance. We do have a few budget items this evening that I want to share. The first one is related to our ending fund balance. So as you know very well, the state requires us to maintain a minimum reserve of 3% of our operating expenditures. For this year, that amount is $6,681,987. However, our ending fund balance is in excess of that, and so that's what this report is to notify you of in advance of seeking board's adoption of our budget later this evening. The state caps your ability to hold on to reserves or to build up an ending fund balance at 10% of your operating expenditures. And so, again, just members of the community may not be aware, the state actually does not want the district to save money. Rather, they want to spend this year's dollars for this year's kiddos. And so that does create a financial challenge when we have such fluctuating dollars coming in year over year. I do want to correct this agenda item. It is a de minimis change, but a change nonetheless. If you can, strike out the negative unassigned fund balance, that negative 1.2 million, the very last number for the 24-25 budget. Obviously, we can't have a negative budgetary number. What will be affected by that is the committed dollars. Committed needs to be reduced by that 1.2 million. And so if you're, again, tracking on our spreadsheet here or on the agenda item, it is the 6th number down. Committed dollars, instead of being 9.799 million, should be corrected to $8,574,368. Again, that's $8,574,368. So again, this is not for approval, but rather is a initial step in the budget adoption process this evening to notify the community of our ability to meet the 3% reserve, and in fact to exceed that. Our ending fund balance this upcoming year, if the budget is approved this evening, will be just over 10% total. However, again, you can see the breakdown of those numbers based on committed funds, LCAP, supplemental funds that carried over, things like that. Do we have any questions on this initial breakdown of our ending fund balance report?
It doesn't look like it.
Okay, well, the next 2 items, if you'd like me just to keep rolling.
Yes, please.
These 2 items together, again, you'll receive a brief report from me, and then we will roll right into a public hearing on each of the 2. What these both do, we approve these each year. You approved them last year. I believe it was on June 28th of 2023. This allows for our ability, if we do have any cash flow constraints during the year, to be able to first take loans from our own funds. For instance, in times past when we had a large bond fund balance, if we knew that we were going to get property tax revenues in April, for instance, and in March we were low on cash, we could take a loan against the bond for a couple weeks, be able to make sure that we meet our financial obligations until that cash comes in from property taxes in April, and then we immediately repay the bond. So I'm not familiar last time that Burbank actually had to do this, although it's a pretty common practice across the state. So that's 10B, the report on temporary interfund cash borrowing that will come back as a public hearing followed by approval of a resolution. And then the other one is to be able to do something very similar, but if we don't have the funds available within our own district funds, then we're able to make a similar loan with the county to, again, this is not to actually solve budgetary challenges, but rather to help with cash flow given the timing of certain tax receipts.
Thank you. I did want to briefly point out, based on some feedback that I got over the past week, that these 2 items have nothing to do with swimming pools, and they don't have anything to do with LAUSD. It sounds funny, but I got many people reaching out saying, why do you have so many items on your agenda about LAUSD? And it was like, we don't have any items, nor do we have anything on swimming pools. So important to note that. I think LA County is maybe where people got it from, which always important to clarify because this is complicated stuff. But thank you for that, Mr. Cantwell. I appreciate it. I'm going to open up, I'm going to move to 11A. In what may be a historic first, we are 30 minutes ahead of our approximate public hearing time. Yeah, because usually we do it like an hour and a half after.
Do you have to wait till 7:30?
Oh,
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's, because before if you did it past, at least people knew. So we might have to.
Mr. Cantwell, do we have to wait till 7:30 for the public hearing? If it's agendized as approximately 7:30, do you know?
Recommend that, yes. We can
Okay.
return to it.
okay.
Got it. So then 12.
So then we will move past 11A and 11B, and we will jump to new and unfinished business. If somebody could give me like a little wave when we get to 7:30, just so I can.
Do you want me to set timer?
Oh my God, set the timer. Okay,
You'll have to move to 12C.
I will move to 12C. I'm going to move to 12C entirely because I want to.
Please forgive me, but we can still do 12A. It's 12B and C that would be the ones that we'd want to delay.
I caught A and B, I didn't catch C.
We miss you, Andy. Okay, so we'll do 12A, adoption of Resolution 42 for fiscal stabilization plan. Can I have a motion and a second?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Agakanian, seconded by Clerk Ponser Kamkar. Any discussion?
I don't think so.
It doesn't, I mean, we've had lengthy conversations about this leading up into tonight, so it makes sense. So not seeing any conversation, can we move ahead to a vote?
It's a pretty common practice. We've done it before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just I think it's helpful to let the public know why we may or may not be having a conversation.
Just a reminder, this is the item which we brought to you on May 18th,
Right.
which we said was a month in advance, but we wanted to make sure that the discussion occurred when the community was still engaged with schools rather than during the summer.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cantwell. Ms. Ponser Kamkar?
Yeah, and this was, we would have had a fiscal stabilization plan no matter what, but the amount changed based on the conversation with the county. Is that right?
Yeah.
Correct?
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with one absence. We'll skip 12B and 12C and move to 12D, World Language Textbook Adoption. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Agakanian, seconded by Ms. Ponser Kamkar. I just want to thank everybody who went into the process of doing this. Everybody's pointing at Dr. Anders, so as per usual, thanks to Dr. Anders and all of the teachers who looked through and decided which of the two textbooks they were going to select. I know this is no easy task and it's never perfect, but I know a lot of work went into it. Any questions, concerns? Ms. Ponser Kamkar.
Of course I have a question.
Yeah.
There's a number of, so is this all funded through lottery textbook funds? Yes. Okay, there's no other general fund impact for textbooks? Okay, got it, thanks.
That's important to note. Thank you. Appreciate that. And just for the public's knowledge, if you ever want to see these textbooks, they're always available to peruse in the district office. Dr. Agakanian has a question.
Thank you. So just based on budgetary woes and environmental concerns and digital age, I know a lot of colleges are now shifting to digital formats. Where are we on that as a state?
So the state of California only approves certain textbooks that were eligible to purchase. Some of those publishers have 100% online materials. Some publishers don't have any at all, or they have a combination of both. Our teachers have opted most of the time, depending on what subject we're talking about, have opted for more of a hybrid version where there's an actual physical textbook, but there are ancillary materials that are online, which help them to navigate. Part of the problem is that sometimes, depending on a family, they may not have reliable internet or have reliable technology to be able to manage a completely digital platform.
Chair. So just segueing into a digital divide, and there's still a concern. Where are we on that as a district? Have we, just curious.
Well, there was a lot of discussion about that at the time of the Perkins report and what we wanted to do with the bond. So we did make a huge investment in Chromebooks at the time when we were at home during COVID, and that has been several years ago, and the life expectancy of those Chromebooks are only a couple years anyway. So part of the conversation will be on what we do digitally to close the gap there.
And if we may, I would also like us to look into hotspots. I can tell you that T-Mobile has a contract with LA Unified. We do have the same contract now?
Yeah, we actually did a little bit of an upgrade at John Burroughs High School.
But hotspots to give it to students, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know.
I've done that too.
I'm reassuring.
It's also nice to know, too, that our public libraries here in Burbank also provide hotspots and laptops and have free Wi-Fi, even in their parking lot, for people who might be unhoused.
Also, I've been told by our Director of Technology, even though, some folks in the community may not think that a bond is necessary, if it doesn't pass, we will not have funds for new Chromebooks after this coming year. It will be depleted.
Thank you for bringing it all together. That's what I was trying to make a point about. Thank you.
Yes, just on textbook stuff, from like a logistics perspective, back when I was a teacher, we had like a class set in the classroom, and then kids got sent home with a textbook at the beginning of the year that they basically brought back at the end of the year. Sometimes it had never been cracked. Is that kind of what we're working with here?
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
Exactly what we're doing.
None of my students, of course. They were all reading very carefully out of their 11th grade English textbook.
Yes,
But
yes, of
other people, I heard stories of that, so.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with one absence. We'll move on to 12E, approval of 2024-2025 consolidated application for categorical programs as presented.
So moved.
Even before I asked, Dr. Agakanian moved. Miladies, would one of you care to second?
Second,
Miss Tabbitt, I'll toss one your way.
you like me better.
Let's not fight, ladies. Seconded by Miss Tabbitt. Any discussion? Okay. Could somebody provide just a 2-second overview of what this is for people who might not know?
So the consolidated application is an annual occurrence where school districts to go ahead and apply for Title I funds or Title II funds, Title III, or Title IV funds.
Okay.
So in this case, Burbank will be applying for 1 through 4.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with one absence. We will move to 12F, approval of agreement between Boys and Girls Club of Burbank and After School Education and Safety ACES program as presented. Can I have a motion and a second? So moved. Moved by Ms. Ponser-Kamkar, seconded by Dr. Agakanian. Any conversation? Oh, Clerk Ponser-Kamkar.
You know, I love childcare. Dr. Knappa, can you just talk about this one a little bit? I am still forming my question.
So the ACES program is a state-funded program, and we receive about $700,000 a year for the ACES program. And so we have the ACES childcare program at Providencia, Washington, Disney, and Luther for about 440, 450 students. So they all attend for free for childcare. And so the Boys and Girls Club carry out the responsibilities of the day-to-day operation of the program. So we contract with them.
Okay, but that's separate from the other Boys and Girls Club after school.
That is correct.
Got it. I did not know that Boys and Girls Club actually operated ACEs. That's super helpful. And are there eligibility requirements for ACEs?
Yes, they do go ahead, and families do go ahead and register for the program, and it's on a first-come, first-served basis.
Great. And I remember that one as being like more restrictive in terms of timing, only like
Correct.
you got to keep your kid there all day, which I thought was
Correct.
quite lovely.
And it's audited there's an audit process, and they do check student by student, day by day, when students check in and when families check students out.
Right. And
So
that's
it's-
part of the state fund. That's a state
Absolutely.
requirement. That's not a,
Absolutely.
we're being weird about a
No.
certain program. Got it. Thanks.
Any other discussion? It is. Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 5-0 with one absence. We will move on to 12G. Yes, am I in the right place?
Yes.
Sweet Lord. Advanced Placement AP Spanish Textbook Adoption. May I have a motion and a second? Moved by Ms. Tabbitt, seconded by Ms. Ponser Kamkar. Any discussion? Yes.
So, Dr. Knappich, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm going
we
to
can
defer
answer.
to Dr. Yeah.
We can answer.
What's that, Knappich? Just out of curiosity, the Spanish, because I one time got one of these from a friend that the kid goes to school. So is it Spanish or is it Mexican? Because there's a little bit of difference. Yeah, Latin versus European.
So we do offer Spanish for Spanish speakers, but our advanced placement test is just Spanish, Castilian Spanish.
Castilian. Thank you. Thank you.
Tell me how this fits in with the AP Spanish textbook that's on the previous item that we adopted.
Sure, not every publisher has a textbook for advanced placement. So it's on two separate agenda items because it's a separate publisher that only does works on the advanced Spanish.
So is that a separate funding?
Same, still California Lottery.
Got it. Cool.
It's just we didn't put it on the same item because of the fact that we wanted the public to recognize it was a different publishing company and it was a different textbook. And the amount for that is still coming out of California Lottery.
Okay. So the one that's on the previous, so there's the TEMAS 3E and AP Spanish. So that's going to be used
Spanish 1, Spanish 2, Spanish 3.
in partially AP, and then there's like a full AP. Okay,
Yep.
got it. And AP Spanish is the only AP language that we offer?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, we don't have lit, do we? What
AP
we're
foreign
trying-
language,
There's
excuse
there's not a textbook yet for AP Lit.
Spanish literature.
That is correct.
Correct. Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you for splitting those into two different items. I appreciate that. Any additional conversation? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with one absence. We will go to 12H. Approval of 100% childcare fee reduction for unduplicated students paid by Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, ELOP, for Around the Bell and Boys and Girls Club of Burbank from July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025, as presented. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Agakanian, seconded by Clerk Ponser Kamkar. Any discussion? Just as a point of clarification, the ELOP funds, Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, there is a very specific set of items that we can use this money for.
That's correct.
Very restricted.
So this is one of those. So can you talk a little bit about why aren't we using this somewhere else?
So we provide 180 days of childcare during the regular school year. Then during winter break, spring break, and summer school, we provide a total number of 30 days of childcare during those three time sessions too. So summer school and also childcare occurs every day in the summer, and it has to be a full day program. So a combination of during the regular school year, 8 to 3, and then 3 to 6. In summer school, it's going to be from 8 to 1-ish is the academic side of it, more or less, and then childcare is 1 to 6.
Great. Ms. Sponsor Camper.
And these are not general funds. This is through ELOP, which is very restrictive, et cetera. et
It's for
cetera, et cetera.
unduplicated students.
Got it.
Of
Thank
which 51% of the students need to be unduplicated in the program.
Excellent. Anybody else? And to remind our public, unduplicated students are foster and homeless youth, English learners, low socioeconomic, and am I missing anything? Good? No. Okay. Any other conversation? I think it's great that we're able to use the funds this way. It's very needed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with one absence. 12I, approval of agreement between the Burbank Unified School District and Evernorth Behavioral Health, Inc., Human Resources, as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Agakanian,
Oh, second.
seconded by Ms. Ponser Kamkar. Discussion.
Can we just have so this is establishing an EAP. Have we not had one before, or has this been the EAP provider in the past?
I believe this is a different EAP.
Okay. So, my understanding, like my limited understanding, having been with organizations that have EAPs, is that they can be tremendously helpful should people actually take advantage of them, right? And so, this is not a insignificant amount of money, but it's certainly a whole lot less than, if people take advantage of it, they can really get our money's worth, our collective money's worth. So I would love, and I can also just ask, Dr. Richenko, like at a later date, kind of what's the plan for rolling this out with employees to make
Sure.
sure that they feel like they can use it appropriately. Most people, I feel like, know they have access to an EAP, but don't necessarily know what it can provide. And usually they can provide some pretty amazing services from either like a mental health support perspective or legal help.
Yeah, actually, that's the focus.
Okay, great.
So fiscal impact, in that line item, it says to serve the mental and emotional needs of employees at $1.89 per employee per month.
I know with ours, we were able to do a number of sessions with like a BetterHelp or a Talkspace or something like that per month. Like the EAP covered that, which by itself,
Sure.
is a really good value. So
It says
I'm
it in the
supportive of this.
discussion, but could somebody give a very quick, what is an EAP? No, it's, I think we, as people in this world, we're acronym heavy, but should take a minute to explain to people what this is.
It's an employee assistance program. So when one of our employees has a situational experience in their life that is impacting their mental health and emotional health, and also impacting their ability to perform their duties at work effectively, as a district, we're able to reach out to them and to offer them services to be able to get them back on the right track. And there are a certain number or limited sessions that can be given. For some employees, that's enough. And if it's not enough, then our employees tend to tap into their insurance to have continuing services.
Thank you for that. And I think to Ms. Ponser Kamkar's point, it'd be helpful to know how we share this service with our employees so they know that they can access it. How we do that would be just interesting to know.
Our union makes sure to educate all the union members of this service. At a district level, when we know that a person's performance is struggling and we understand that it's because of a situational experience, then we will offer that up and we provide the brochures and we have a consultation with them to let them know what their rights are, what their benefits are, and we help and assist them to get into assistance.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Ms. Ponser Kamkar.
One thing that I've seen be successful is often you can work with EAP to provide workshops on various topics, right? And so we've done those at work, virtually, essentially. We had one on kind of like managing stress during uncertain times during COVID. That might be a helpful one for our employees. But I would just really say, like, they want to, even though it doesn't help their bottom line, the people who are managing the program really want the program to be used. And so to the extent that we can lean on them for, like, it's an all-you-can-eat buffet, let's eat all we can eat. Let's stuff ourselves at this point.
That is Dr. Richenko's vision for moving the program forward. And just so that the community knows that these services are completely confidential.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with one absence. We will move on to, I just lost my place. 12J, thank you, friends. Approval of agreement for professional services resources. Okay, sorry, for a minute I was like, didn't I just say this? I did, but for a different thing. Can I have a motion and a second? Moved by Dr. Agakanian, seconded by Ms. Ponser-Kamkar. Any discussion? Does not look like it. Okay. All those in favor? Oh, back it up. Ms. Tabbitt. Wait. I don't know why that was my backup sound. That was a stabby Hitchcock sound.
So obviously we do have some employees with chronic absenteeism. We're gonna figure it out. I was just talking to John.
Just having a conversation.
Yeah, there's a meeting going on? Thank you, sorry. Just so I can wrap my head around it, we obviously will have some employees with chronic absenteeism for a variety of reasons. Or let's just leave it at that. So what does this program look like? How do you work with folks who maybe figured out how to manipulate a system or have just call out sick, whatever, right?
Right, so the Board of Education just recently, I believe it was 2 months ago or 3 months ago, approved a new language with CSCA for employees and the requirement that is needed from a doctor in order to substantiate the level of absences you are. So it
More than 3 days.
Right. So it used to be a longer threshold. I think the threshold was actually 10 days. They moved it down to 5 or 3. I can't remember exactly. I can let the board know. But we have been working with our unions to help us with that because they're interested in us solving this issue as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this a system we've been using in the past through Frontline?
Yes.
Okay. I only know them as a SIS system, not as a sub-management, so that's helpful.
And
You
I
like
thought
it?
they were flea prevention. I'm just
Also
kidding, I
that,
didn't. I knew.
So every time we had to use the SIS, we were like, do our children have fleas? Maybe.
I have lost it. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with one absence. We'll move to, no, I know, we're 7 minutes away.
Don't worry, I got time to go.
Yes, Queen. 12K, second reading of the 2024-2025 Burbank Unified School District Local Control Funding Formula, LCFF, and Local Control Accountability Plan, LCAP, as presented. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Agakanian, seconded by Ms. Ponser-Kamkar. Discussion. I feel like we have had, I think this is a good opportunity to yet again thank Dr. Knappich and Dr. Anders for just an unbelievable amount of work. If anybody has attended any of the numerous sessions, and Dr. Paramo and Dr. Macias and Mr. Cantwell, literally everybody in the district office who put in countless hours to answer our questions, to answer the community's questions. This is a difficult process, excruciating at times, but just a huge thank you to everybody who went back to the drawing board numerous times to try to reconfigure, to try to take feedback that we received and integrate it into what we're doing.
And here's another situation, right, where, well, you don't know right yet because I haven't said what I was going to say. So.
What were you?
Of course. That was a preamble.
Oh, God.
You're going to say right. No. Oh, my gosh. Here's once again a case where education has taken what we have and kind of flew something else in it, and you've had to change how we're
Yeah.
going to go forward. I mean, here we are again.
Yeah.
However, you know, I think the community really needs to understand what LCAP means and doesn't mean for Burbank Unified. It's when it first came out, I thought, oh, okay, this is really great because it took away some restricted funding and allowed us to do some things that were better for kids. But not in Burbank Unified because we don't meet the thresholds. So what it allows is the school district in the town next door gets $10,000 per student more in funding than we do. And yet we're supposed to have the same outcomes. And it just infuriates me. So I needed to say that. It has nothing to do, Dr. Henders, with the job that you do or how well you do it or any of us. But man, it is just one of those things, you know, a friend and I were having a conversation. It's not a budget crisis. It's not. It's how we have to spend our money or how we get our money.
I think it's both.
And, well, there's never going to be enough money in education. Let's just say that.
True.
But if you have constant restrictions or aren't getting the funding that everybody else seems to be getting, it does make your job more difficult.
Yeah.
So, and if they would give us the $6 million on my other soapbox. Anyway. Yeah,
Where is the PERS rant?
You just knew it was coming because
Look, I think one of the things
anyway,
that we've noticed is the intention of LCAP and LCFF is not really in the land that we live in anymore. What it was intended to do and how far away we've moved from local control, I think, is at the core of this. And it's something that we need to keep talking to our legislators about. Whether it's numerous bills that are hitting the Assembly and State Senate floor that are clearly not reflective of the current state of education, to the way we get funded. I think we all know here that we are faced with more and more stumbling blocks as opposed to more and more tools to help us succeed. And I think you're right, Ms. Tabbitt, that doesn't look like there's any changes coming anytime soon. But I
see the precursor to right was.
Yeah. But I do think that this kind of education is really important, and I think it dovetails nicely also into the importance of asking our community to continue supporting us with a bond continuance, and when it's time to make a third valiant and desperately needed attempt for a parcel tax, letting our community know that the only way we're going to be able to provide the level of exemplary public education that Burbank Unified has been able to do for as long as it has is if the community invests in us in the way that we invest in their children. So I think all of that to say, I hope that people who've paid attention to LCAP in the process see how desperately we need our community to stand with us the way that we stand with our students and our teachers, because this is not stopping anytime soon, right? We're going to continue to have to look at excruciating cuts, and those cuts are human beings and people who we care deeply for and who have made Burbank Unified the place, the destination location for families wanting to send their kids to high quality public school. But we are not going to be able to do it without people's help. Ms. Ponser-Kampkar.
Yeah. And I think on the public, educating the public about LCFF and school funding in general, is really just this idea. I think we all sit up here and live in the land of well, of course it's LCFF, of course it's all state funded, of course there's a base grant, a supplemental, and whatever. And there's so much education to do with are families who are new to California or new to our school system in particular, right? Because they may be coming from, even if they're moving across the border from an LAUSD kind of area, they're going to wonder, like, why is this school that gets much lower results funded so much higher than my neighborhood school? Why do they get aides in all the classrooms? Why do they get these kinds of programs? All of this other stuff that we just can't fund, right? And really explaining to people, like, I know that we pay a lot in property taxes, and that does not mean much. I'm trying not to curse. That doesn't mean much when it comes to schools. That said, just more recognition for Dr. Knappich and Dr. Anders for like putting together, I think, a really beautiful and inclusive process here. I think it would be very easy to check the boxes on something like LCAP, and I think this group of administrators really took the time to actually engage our community, which I think is even more important in times where we have to make hard decisions.
Yes.
Right? It would be way more fun to engage the community when we can say, like, we have so much money, what should we spend it on? And the fights might still be as intense, but I feel like even with those first couple of LCAP meetings, which were spicy, people got the sense that we were being transparent, that we were listening, and that we were doing our best to balance all the needs of our students, but especially the changing population that we're serving. So just much recognition, because I know this is a crazy amount of work, and you get to go ahead and like start it again in October, November. So enjoy the 4-month break from LCAP after tonight, I hope, for you.
What I want the public to know is that Dr. Knappich and Dr. Anders definitely did.
Okay, it's 7:30.
They definitely did the heavy lifting, but what I'm proud of is that you can have a conversation with anybody in cabinet about LCAP, and they'll be able to talk to you about it, because it's really a process that everybody's involved in. I do have one thing I think is really important that needs to be said before you finally approve this, and that is the next item is about the budget in general. And what the public doesn't know, because it isn't official but seems to be the direction the governor is going, is that he is not going to allow for any summer layoffs. And what that means is, if you think about this, one of the summer layoffs would have been the counselors, and the counselors were previously funded in LCAP. There's no room in LCAP to be able to put those counselors back in. So that means that they go into the general fund along with the other folks that we were planning on issuing a summer layoff to. So in addition to having to cut over $840,000 in the LCAP for next year, we're still going to have to look at some pretty deep cuts in our general fund because of the halt on the summer layoffs. And that's just something that is difficult to reconcile when you've come this far and been so thoughtful and have been speaking to the community and been speaking to stakeholder groups to have to do. But when you approve this, it's having to understand that those items do not get to go back into LCAP.
Dr. Paramo, just for clarification purposes to our viewers, this was the governor's decision, it was last minute. Well, do we, or?
Yeah, so if the community remembers, I explained that at the end of March, I received an invitation. I'm being very, very courteous. I received an invitation to meet with folks from LA County Office of Education, where they strongly suggested that I go back and cut another $1.5 million to ensure that our budget would be certified, which is a big deal. It's a big deal for us to be certified, particularly when at the second interim, our budget was not certified, it was qualified. So to have 2 qualifications in a row is not a good thing. So we went through the work, we identified the areas, we moved forward, we did all the prerequisite work to do it correctly, to find out that the governor doesn't want us to do any summer layoffs. Now, for me as a superintendent, I can't tell you how frustrating that is. To have the county tell me I should, and then to have the governor say you can't do it, have not had enough processing time to be able to figure that out. But that is where we are. And so when you approve this, it's important that you know that if we are not doing those summer layoffs, those counselors do not go back into LCAP. And I'm saying that specifically to counselors because that's where they were funded previously. The other items we were going to cut were not in LCAP. So those are going to have an impact on the general fund that we weren't anticipating. And so I feel like what we're doing is we're saying at the start of a new school year, hey, we're still going to have to cut $850,000 from LCUP, and we're going to have to cut an additional yada yada million from the general fund because we're still deficit spending.
Thank you for that clarification. I also, Madam Chair, if we want to also continue this conversation, not on the budget, but also other things that are coming. You know, Ms. Tabitha and I serve on the. And I understand, but I also want us to put forward informative stuff about legislation that would have more impact, where only the public can go and talk to their electeds about at least putting some kind of a funding. The one we mentioned about the lawsuits. The problem is there is no funding. The state is not going to fund us. And we have to talk about this because that's something that's going to also hurt us. So maybe we'll put out something later about certain legislation out there that we want our community to go and talk to their electeds about, at least saying, hey, if you bring this forward, put some money behind it where we don't have to take it out of our general funds. Thank you.
Sure. I think it's also a great opportunity to for our PTAs to do voter education, which is something they do, I think, very well with their individual communities. So, okay, we are going to, I think, are we voting? Is that where we are? I think it is not lost on any of us that, if what we're hearing the governor is going to do is in fact what happens, that he has also seemed to have lost the forest through the trees, which is we're talking about human beings who have had to go through the devastating reality of losing a job and then perhaps it coming back only to have it back on it. I mean, this is just not the way you treat people. And it's not the way you treat people who've dedicated their life to public education. And it is really sickening to me that we are being put in a position where we have to inadvertently treat our employees like they're sort of commodities to be moved around at will. And that's not how we operate here in Burbank. And it's just, it is a unbelievably upsetting position for all of us to find ourselves in. So obviously when we know more, we will share more. So let's go ahead and move it to a vote. I think, didn't we? We did.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. So all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with one absence. I'm going to bounce us back to 11A, our first public hearing. The Board of Education will now conduct a public hearing to receive input from any interested parties in the district's temporary interfund cash borrowing resolution for the 2024-2025 fiscal year prior to final adoption as required by Education Code Section 42603.1 as presented. Would anyone like to address the board on this matter? Seeing none, we will move on to the next item, which is 11B, public hearing on the temporary transfers from the school pools fund maintained by the Los Angeles County Treasurer 2024-2025 fiscal year. The Board of Education will now conduct a public hearing to receive input from any interested parties on the district's temporary transfers from the school pools fund maintained by the Los Angeles County Treasurer 2024-2025 as permitted in Article, Section 6 of the California Constitution as presented. Oh, Roman numerals, why do you plague me? Would anyone like to address the board on this matter? Okay, I'm gonna gavel out. We will go back to 12B, adoption of Resolution 43, authorizing temporary transfers from the school pools fund maintained by the Los Angeles County Treasurer 2024-2025 as presented. Moved by Dr. Agakanian. Seconded by Ms. Tabbitt. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0 with one absence. Moving to 12C, adoption of Resolution 44, authorizing temporary interfund cash borrowing 2024-2025 as presented. Moved by Ms. Ponser Kamkar, seconded by Dr. Agakanian. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0 with one absence. We will jump back to, holy shnikes, 12L? Okay, yes? Okay. Second reading and adoption of proposed budget as presented. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Agakanian, seconded by Ms. Ponser Kamkar. Discussion. I think we find ourselves in a similar situation of months and months and months of conversation and really valued feedback and input from our community partners, from our teachers, from our families. I hope one of the things that has been different this time around, and I think it has been, is that our superintendent and our staff have remained open to the feedback and have not sort of made decisions and then did the performative, but what do you think, but actually adjusted and changed and thought and debated over the feedback that we got, which is difficult, but I think very much in keeping with the type of district that Dr. Paramo is running. Ms. Ponser Kamkar.
And this was nothing has changed since we reviewed this with Dr. Abdelhamid last meeting, correct?
Nothing has changed, just understand that the budget included the additional summer layoffs that are no
Correct.
longer going to occur. So that means, maybe. Yeah, I'm going to remain hopeful.
Yeah.
I'm a hopeful guy. However, like I said, with that in mind, we're going to be starting the school year looking at how we're going to balance that budget again.
Okay. So we're adopting both LCFF, LCAP, and the budget under the assumption that we will be making August 15th layoffs based on the governor's budget, or based on the budget that will get adopted at some point in the next 10 days, 9 days, I guess. They have to approve it by the end of the month.
They do.
It's
Like
my
legally.
recollection.
State shuts down.
Or they don't get paid, is I think what it happens.
It's more that, yeah.
So, okay. I mean, yeah, we can do what we can do, but I think we have to move forward with the assumptions we've got, right? I think they're still the best assumptions that we can make under unfortunate and uncertain circumstances.
And I think we just need to be ready to, as soon as we know anything concrete, communicate with our union partners, because right now this is just a confusing mess of really irresponsible maneuvering to, I can only assume, try to run for president someday, ? Gavin Newsom?
2 years.
I don't know, man. All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
again, I also want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Promo and all the staff. It's a lot of work, but I think the challenge sometimes people forget, as I said it earlier, it's not as black and white as a city budget or a business. So we're at the mercy of the state and the governor. So I'm hoping there won't be any more surprises, but I don't know. Fingers crossed, you know. Yeah.
That's so depressing. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with one absence. We will move on to 12M, approval of title change for elementary arts instructor to visual and performing arts instructor as presented. May I have a motion and a second? Moved by Ms. Tabbitt, seconded by Ms. Ponser Kamkar. Discussion. I have a few cuestiones. So my assumption is, that the reason this is changing is to give it a broader title so that this position can be utilized not just in elementary, but in other areas?
That is correct.
Okay.
The original approval was only for elementary arts instructors, and now we're coming back so that it applies to elementary and secondary.
Okay.
Yes. And all areas of art too,
Okay. So, quick
of the arts.
clear, this is sort of to the left of this, but I know that right now our dance teachers are considered like PE teachers, correct? And there's been some conversation that what that means, like I think Burroughs lost a dance teacher, that perhaps the remaining PE teacher would then have to pick up, because they're adding dance classes at Burroughs, which they're not trained to do. So, I mean, I assume we're going to be thinking creatively with Prop 28, but I wonder, is this something that we can think about, as far as we have, like, the dance instructors are trained in dance. And I know that there's a limitation with the credentialing that doesn't allow us to say you are credentialed in dance, it's PE, but I think it creates an issue similar to this. So I just wanted to know if you could speak to that.
Sure. Dance is one of those complicated things because it is a class that can be taken as a performing arts class, or it's a class that can be taken in lieu of PE. So believe it or not, we have kids who do 2 years of PE and then they want to do dance and they're getting performing arts credit, and that's absolutely fine. The nuance is that if you are going to take it to replace your PE, then the teacher who's teaching the class needs to be appropriately credentialed. So it does get to be complicated, and we do have to look at those items when we're doing staffing. So when we're in that situation, we need to look at how many kids need to take PE. Am I going to have to open up more dance sections? Or if we don't have a qualified teacher, am I opening up PE and limiting the number of spots I have in dance? Right. So it is it's actually a very sophisticated process where we have to look at what kids want to take and how are we going to deliver that in our master schedule. And our folks work really closely with Dr. Macias to make sure that we're doing it appropriately with the guidance of human resources.
Thank you. And I in no way meant to imply it wasn't being done.
Oh, no.
I think there's just it's helpful for people to hear you talk it out, because I think there was some confusion about the elimination of a dance instructor and what that meant.
Yep.
So any other questions? I mean, I'm really happy about the title change. Dr. Knappich.
I just want to clarify, this is going to be funded by Prop 28
Yes.
monies.
Which is the money that the people pass, it's all, we, the people,
Yes.
to fund arts education.
Correct.
Excellent. Anybody have any other? Hooray arts. Huzzah. All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with one absence. Moving to 12N, one would think that people who did public comment about this would have stayed. Let us now move on to 12N, approval of status of local indicators as presented. May I have a motion and a second? Moved by Ms. Ponser-Kamkar, seconded by Dr. Agakanian. Dr. Andes.
Good evening, President Weisberg, members of the board, Superintendent Promo, and the BUSD community. I'm presenting on our local indicators, which is part of the California dashboard this evening. These are indicators that we are given parameters to self-evaluate our progress in meeting some of those indicators on that dashboard. So our California dashboard measures things like student performance, climate. Climate would be suspensions and attendance, graduation rate, as well as what we've talked about with the college and career readiness. 4 indicators are also included in the dashboard that are local indicators that require investigation locally to see whether or not we're making progress or whether or not we're meeting those metrics. And so that's what we're presenting tonight. These are also, when we look at these measures, we're looking at our local goals to make sure that we're making progress towards our four BUSD goals that are in our LCAP and school district as well. Just as a point of reference, as we go through these slides, there's 5 different reflection, a scale of 1 through 5 for how we're doing as far as self-reflection. 1 being exploration and research phase, 2 beginning development, 3 initial implementation, 4 full implementation, and 5 full implementation and sustainability. These are true across all of these metrics, but not always exactly the same. So getting to our priority 2, this is our progress and meeting the standards. Really what these metrics are indicating is that we've been able to get to a place in the district where we are teaching to the standards. So really these are almost 10 years old in some sense with some of our subjects because Common Core standards have been around for quite some time and we've fully implemented those standards. It's a little different than whether or not our students are performing at grade level like we would want for all students. This is more or less how we've done as a district to make sure that we've adopted the textbooks, we've trained the teachers, that the standards we're fluent in those across all subjects and grade levels. So these indicators are how we go through that process, and are finished adopting all of our textbooks really. World language was one of the last big subjects that we needed to do an adoption for, so we're actually about to begin the process of cycling back and looking at English language arts and math for a new textbook. Obviously there aren't new standards or something that we have to address, but we're in a good spot when it comes to being fully implemented.
Robin is absolutely correct. The first subject areas in our adoptions were math and English, so logically we'd go back there first. However, there are a few ancillary subjects that we have to address before that. For example, our AP Euro book is probably 20 years old, so we have to go back to our AP selections and make sure that they're current, and then we'll do math and English. But those are the next ones, math and English.
Correct. So I don't want anyone getting too excited about new textbooks next year. In those subjects, it does take some time to generate lottery funds so that we can make a large adoption like that. So stay tuned, but just know that we will be circling back again and starting a new cycle. The next slide is our local assessment. So part of...
Can I do a quick point of clarification just for anybody looking at these slides? The numbers don't indicate like necessarily how well we're doing, but where we are in the implementation.
Correct.
So if they're seeing the 3 for science, that's not because we're doing poorly in science, it's because we're in a different stage of implementation. I just wanted to point that out to people.
Correct. And that one specifically about our implementing policies and programs to support staff in identifying where areas that they need to improve.
Yeah.
A lot of the reason why that's still 3 is it wasn't that long ago that we did adopt a science textbook, so we're still making progress in making sure we're fully familiar with the curriculum that we're using and how it addresses the standards in that area.
Thank you.
Yep. So the next slide are our local indicators, and this is part of what we take into consideration when reporting out on our progress. The main point to take away from this is we need to have our own local assessments in addition to the state required CASP assessment. We try to use these assessments as a formative tool to really get an idea of where our kids are doing as far as being on grade level on the standards during the school year in preparation for the CASP test at the end of the school year. And as Dr. Weisberg had referenced, this was a big topic in our Principal Institute about looking at this data to adjust our practices and drive our instructional models as far as making sure that we're working with every student to be at grade level. So you can see we're at elementary, we're about 66%. Where we are at the end of the year. And then the preliminary results for the CASP assessment, again, these are preliminary, is a 56%. Math, we're at 58% students on our local assessments, and that's pretty similar, a little higher than what we see from the state assessments. So We use iReady as our local assessment, and it's calibrated quite well with what we see at the state level. Scores are inflated just a little bit with the iReady assessment compared to what we see on CASP. Could be that different assessment, different environment, a couple factors there. But the one thing I would point out with iReady is that that's a state or a nationwide assessment, so they try to calibrate as much as possible to our state standards, but they're not as perfectly aligned like the CASP assessment is, which is designed specifically for California.
Oops, sorry. Yikes. Can I just ask a question about the sub-bullet there on proficiency increase from 27%? So, or by 27%. So does that mean like a student is coming in, I make up, right? And you can tell me if this is wrong. That like if 50% of my students I've got second graders, and 50% of them are on grade level at the beginning of the year, meaning they're at essentially an end of first grade reading level, right? Or a 2.0, right? Let's call it a 2.0. And then that means that at the end of the year, if I started with 50%, that 77% of them are now at a third grade reading level? Or am I making that much more complicated?
What grade level are you
I
teaching?
started at second.
Second.
Like by the end of the year, are they at the next grade level? Is that kind of how we're measuring it? Like, are they at where they're supposed to be and where they're supposed to be?
So with the iReady assessment, we give it at the beginning of the year, end of year. Beginning of year is measuring what that student should be able to do at that grade level.
Okay.
So it's saying you're proficient, if you're a second grader, you're proficient at second grade level. It's basically the same assessment at the end of the year, and we're measuring growth of how many kids we moved from not proficient to proficient at that grade level. So with that 27%.
Got it. So it's 27% are at or above grade level by the end of the year. Got it.
Well, not just 27%,
Right.
66% at or above, but it increased by 27%.
Yep.
So we were our instruction was able to move 27% of that population to be grade level proficient.
Got it. Yeah. No, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding like where all the moving. No. So if we're 66% at the end.
Oh, at the end.
At the end, that means that we started the year at, oh God.
Like 40 something.
Yeah, 39%.
39, yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
39% we're at the second grade level at the beginning of the year, and then 66 we're proficient by the end of the year. They are amazing.
Right?
Weird. And it turns out they could teach me some math. Thank you.
This next slide looks at secondary for English, language arts, and math. And I break this out by 6 through 8 and then 9 through 12. And so we're looking at iReady again as our local assessment, and then also included the preliminary results this year of the CASP assessment. So to give you an idea, and those numbers are pretty aligned as far as how our students do, especially in reading. There's a discrepancy a little bit with the CASP assessment and our local assessment when it comes to middle school math. But these are consistent with what we've scored in previous years, both of these.
I just want to take a moment, if you can keep that slide up. This is the exact reason why the recommendation to school boards is that our goals are focused on third grade literacy, middle school math, and college readiness, or A through G, because we have made such huge gains in our Algebra 1 kids. But if we look at these numbers for middle school math, there is a heck of a lot of room to improve.
The next slide is support for teachers and administrators. So what we report out here is our ability to provide professional development and increase capacity within our staff, meet the needs of our employees as far as what they need to be effective in their roles. So there's 3 areas we're looking at, is identifying what the needs are of the group. We do a lot of that through surveys, school satisfaction survey, as well as surveying our staff. If you heard in the Principals Institute, we talked about street data and talking to students and teachers to find out what their exact needs are and how it correlates to their practice or their learning. Based on those, we look at the individual needs of teachers and then provide support for the standards that they have not yet mastered. So Algebra Project is a perfect example of this in our PLC models of using the DeForest questions of really being specific and explicit about what we want students to learn, how we measure whether they've learned it, what we do if they have or have not learned, and then how we can improve our practice. Priority 3, so this is our next priority for our local indicators, is the parent and family engagement. And so they give us again, a rubric for us to score ourselves and determine where we are in engaging with parents. This one's become a little easier to measure post-pandemic. If you remember, there was a time, even with our surveys, where it was difficult to ask questions about feeling welcomed at school because we weren't allowing parents to come to our schools. But that's changed significantly, and so you can see that we are in full implementation in most areas when it comes to parent and family engagement and our capacity to build trust and respectful relationships. Additional questions that we have to rate is professional learning as far as partnering with families, and that's one area that we identified that we want to continue to grow, is in that communication and provide more access to information both to parents and students. And so that's actually was also a focus during our Principals Institute, is looking at our communication systems and making sure we're using them to our full capacity. Last slide here, items 9 through 12 when it comes to our parent and family engagement. Again, we're full implementation across the board on these. And these are, again, just opportunities to work with our staff in encouraging and fostering that partnership with families. So priority 6, we jump ahead because not all priorities are local district priorities. Some of them are county priorities that they have to report out on. And so this is school climate. This circles back to our LCAP as far as the requirement to create and send out a school satisfaction survey. And so this is where we report out on some of those results that came from that satisfaction survey as part of our LCAP. So the key findings here was, and I'm just going to go through these, our familiarity and engagement with BUSD's LCAP has increased this year. I think a lot of that was because of the context of the budget, that we had that increased engagement. But one of the findings along with this was also to try to generate some basic awareness of what LCAP is. I think people are familiar with how it looks for BUSD, but they could have more information about what it is in general for the state. Overall, our students and families respond that they have positive perceptions of our teachers, which is always true, outstanding. Significant parent response perceptions of their principals show a statistically significant increase across all measures in 23-24. So kudos to our current class of administrators as they've seen that increase in our survey last year.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight what a really important statistic that is, because, you know, we've gone through a couple of years of having quite a bit of principal turnover, not this year, and I think it speaks volumes to the type of leadership we have now at our school sites, that there is a significant increase positively. So I just wanted to highlight that because I know it has been an issue in the past, so it's nice to see.
Well, and just as a clarification on that, like the principal turnover that we do have is because people are being promoted into district leadership positions, which is great for them and the district.
Another really positive statistic is 75% agreement across all areas as far as parents feeling like they're engaged or have opportunities to be engaged with their school. Students have also indicated that instances of bullying are happening less frequently this year across all individual characteristics besides race. But in 2024, respondents report bullying less frequently than in the previous year. So I think that's a lot of the DEI work we've been doing to address some of those concerns, as well as our positive administrators at our school sites. Students indicate that they are more likely to attend a four-year university after high school than in the previous year. I wanted to address that too specifically. We've been talking about the college and career metric the last couple of meetings, so I deep dived a little bit into it. There have been some metrics that have changed when it comes to that indicator, but the one place specifically where I saw a noticeable decrease from 2019, which was the last time it was reported, to what we had this last school year, was in the area of dual enrollment. Those numbers went down significantly, and I think just assumptions is that during distance learning, those 2 years, fewer students were able to take or engage in dual enrollment courses. And so those add up. When we're looking at a graduating class and identifying whether they've taken a dual enrollment or college course, they lost 2 years basically of their high school career where that might not have been an option for them. Or second, they did do a college course but didn't, because of the distance and the relationship that we had during the pandemic, didn't go through their school to report it as a dual enrollment course. They just took it for college credit, not additional high school credit. So those two factors, those were one of the main area that significantly decreased that metric or indicator. So our last slide here is our school six, or our priority six, the recommendations. So again, these are the Hanover research team looking at the results of our school satisfaction survey in tandem with us to determine what areas we can improve on or focus on in the coming year. And so one is around the LCAP. So we've seen increased improvement in awareness, increased participation and awareness, but we need to create some increase in familiarity in how the LCAP works. And so we're working on an infographic next year to assist with that. Something that's digestible and doesn't require, being present for 7 or 8 meetings throughout the school year. Engage and foster voice among educational partners. So the survey results indicate that parent respondents do not feel that the district office administrators are in tune with their children's school's most pressing needs. And so instructional staff do not frequently engage in the conversations related to their school. This is challenging in some respects because it's not necessarily confidential in all circumstances, but it's not necessarily an area that is going to be publicly discussed or brought up. So we can work on this and see where we can improve as far as giving that population a voice.
Can I, just a quick clarifying question. The instructional staff do not frequently engage in conversations related to their school. With whom? Parents? Or
Yes.
one another? With parents?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or the foster home. Develop targeted professional development opportunities for staff. Yeah.
This isn't foster, this is fostering voice, right?
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
I was like, oh man, I misread this.
Yeah, no, that was my fault.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood who the instructional staff that it needed. It makes sense because it's parent respondents, so.
I'm juggling too many things, so let me circle back and start that one over. Yeah, so not to confuse this was not foster youth. Sorry, that was something I've been working on otherwise. This is fostering voice among educational partners, and that's basically getting feedback from our families on what's best for their child. I'm sorry about that.
No. It was clear. It was just that one moment.
Yep. Develop targeted professional development opportunities for staff. So this is where we can look at specific areas where we can improve, and that would be mental health and awareness, behavior management, school safety, English learner instruction. Those are our biggest priorities for improvement. Those are also very much aligned to the conversation of coming back in person and from the pandemic. Of those were the populations that had the most difficulty with school during distance learning. That was it. So what happens next is if we vote that these indicators are as is, they will all be met, and then I'll submit that to the CDE for next year's dashboard to show that our local indicators were all met.
Thank you for this. Questions? Don't apologize.
Regarding the dashboard, I know we've got some preliminary results for some of the things that they look at in terms of CASP and eye makeup. We've got things like graduation rates and A to G and all of that kind of stuff. Are we feeling pretty good about what our dashboard is going to look like as a district? Are there any areas of concern?
We've been talking a lot about chronic absenteeism still, especially with specific subgroups. Some schools have, even though they're a population of 30 students or so, they still count as a subgroup. And so that's actually been part of our LCAP too, is looking at targeting those specific subgroups or students found within those to try to address chronic absenteeism. But we're also talking about addressing that district-wide anyway as an initiative in the fall, because it does bring in more revenues when students are at school. So that's one for sure. I can't give you an update on where I think we're going to land on that. Just know that that's still an ongoing conversation from last year's dashboard as we go into next year. They do populate. This will be published in about October, November. But it's again based off of last year's data. So we can look at this late fall, but we're always looking at a year behind a little bit and tracking where we are currently with this school year. When it comes to performance in math and English, what I would say is that our 3rd through 8th grade students are right on par with what we've been doing in the last couple of years. Our 11th grade may see a slight decline. We've just had a population of students that didn't finish in the time that we had allotted, and we had really challenging times getting them to come out of class to finish and just submit the assessment, really. So in some of those circumstances, we don't get the score or the work that the student completed because of that. So I do anticipate 11th grade may go down a little bit just because of that factor. When it comes to graduation rate, I think we're again right on where we have been.
Quick question.
If not better.
So regarding those forms that you said they don't come out and fill them out on time, and is that mandatory?
I think you might be conflating two things that Dr. Anders was talking about. Are you talking about the free and reduced lunch?
No, the last.
So he was talking about finishing tests in a time, like they didn't finish in the time they were given.
Oh, it was test.
Yes.
The CASP test.
Yes.
Cast. I thought you said. No.
No, that's okay. I just want
And it's not a time to test. It's just they didn't want to lose any class time to come down and complete it. Yeah.
And it's not an assessment that counts towards a grade.
Correct.
It's
Correct.
just every 11th grader takes it.
Yeah, and it's a challenge for us to schedule
is
the right amount of
mandatory, but it's not
time
part
for
of the
them to
grade.
take it because we don't want them to lose instructional time if they've finished. So we try to find a happy medium where we're only pulling a few kids out to finish instead of holding everybody, sort of in a testing room.
Yeah, that's a pretty impossible situation. Yeah. But I think that speaks to something that we all said a little bit after public comment, which is when you look at metrics without understanding the myriad components that go into, why somebody, didn't do as well or finish. There's so many things that go into all of these things, and that's why it's important to have a more robust understanding of these rather than to sort of hone in on a number and say, well, why are we only here? Well, we have experts who can tell you why and all the many reasons that contribute to that. Doesn't mean we're settling for it, but it means we have a pretty deep understanding and we do know why.
And they only test 11th grade, so that one grade level is representing all of the high school students. So we found that the A through G is our focus. That's where we're going to put the most of our energy and work towards.
Yeah. Yes.
And just for public, they can always reach out to you and ask these
Oh,
questions.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anders. Any other questions? No, ma'am. As usual, we salute you. We have to vote, right? I don't know who I am. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with one absence. We are going to move on to consent agenda. Do I have any items? I know, Ms. Ponter-Kamkar, you have one that you'd like to pull?
Yeah, I'd like to pull 13AH.
13AH?
Yes.
Okay, so may I have a motion and a second to approve, oh, sweet, 13A through 13O and 13Q through 13AV, except for 13Q 13A through 13O and 13Q through 13AH. No, A, B, C, G, G. G? This is G.
through G.
Q through G. What, you say it again?
Okay. Here, can I make a motion?
I would love it.
I would move that we would approve the consent agenda items 13A through 13O, 13Q through 13AI, and 13A. No, sorry, I did that
it's
wrong.
G.
13AG,
Yes.
13AI through 13AV.
As amended.
That is correct.
No, just those items. The
What?
amended one is one we, is
She
this one
pulled
that we
already
pulled.
that one. She jumped.
And
And the
13P?
P was this amended one, right?
Amended one.
Yeah, but it says it here as amended.
Yeah, but do we approve it separately?
Not, no.
No.
Oh, and 13P as amended. Got it.
See, occasionally I know.
Thank
No,
you.
I didn't know if you wanted to do it separately.
I don't know.
Can I make a
Yeah, anybody can do anything at this point. It's a free-for-all.
so moved?
Moved by Dr. Agakanian.
Second.
No, wait, no, you moved.
Yeah.
Moved by Ms. Ponser Kamkar, seconded by Dr. Agakanian. We do need to discuss 13H, which comes after 13G, before 13AI.
Do you want to approve the consent agenda first and then talk about 13?
That's fine with me.
Okay.
So we will approve 13A.
Don't do it.
I'm not going to do it. There. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0 with one absence. And now let us discuss
Yes.
13AH.
H. Yeah. So this is the approval of agreement with Hanover. So just can you talk about, so this number is different than what we have budgeted for in LCAP. Is this inclusive of all of the research in LCAP, or is this just the additional amount for the mental health kind of research? And you mentioned that we've got a contract that has like a timeline on it. So go ahead.
So the dollar amount, it's like a bundle.
Yeah.
It's what we were previously contracting their service for, plus additional funds to do focus groups and to produce research and presentation on the data that's collected. So it's an encompassing contract for this group. The challenge is, for lack of a better expression, is the passing of the baton. So they usually contract to the end of June. Even though they're contracting to the end of June, they've already started the process for the next school year. So we were not obligated to move forward with a contract for them. It's just a little bit difficult if we start going out for requests for a proposal. Now we probably aren't going to get started with a group until sometime in the fall, and I'm not sure if we'll be able to pull off all the work. So it would be a challenge, but we can do that if we think that's the best way to go.
So in looking at the way it breaks down, it looks like the focus groups are about 23,000. And then the research that comes out of it, meaning what specifically is encompassed in the $47,000?
So not only do they analyze the data that's collected, but they also provide you published research on the items that compare how your district, your community has said about this, and what does the research say about this.
Okay.
So they'll give you information from universities or research institutes that address these issues, and they say, based on the current research, and here it is, this is what we're seeing as a potential issue and how you might resolve it based on best practices that are also research-based.
So does this roughly 70,000, does it include the previous research that they were doing for us, or is this additive to the work that they did for us last year?
Additive.
Okay, so this is all mental health based?
Absolutely.
And so we can assume then, once we've done this, the contract moving forward, if we still contract with them, will be significantly less because we won't be. Right, we'll do this once.
Right.
Even though the bulk of it is the research, I mean, the significantly smaller amount is the actual focus group. So,
That's correct. So next
Okay.
year, it would come back as $70,000 less than what it is this year.
okay. Dr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know it's late. Thank you for that explanation. And again, I'm just going to use my personal experience. I deal with them all the time. I think one thing that you mentioned it well is compared to going out there, the baton factor, but also their research, it's almost like it's liquid. It almost moves. And so the data comes with it. It kind of, so I've tried this with my other job and my full-time job. It comes almost, what's out there is very close, but just the amount of time we did this once, I had to put in with a staff to transfer all the stuff over. It actually came out more expensive by the time we did the math. So I'm just saying there's a reason they do a lot of work. It's this consistent flow of what they do, and I'm just saying this as a research kind of I'm a research guy too, so I'm just saying it. It's not that significant compared to what's out there as well.
And to that point, what I would say is they're not only including all the research, but they're also showing you the data they have already collected with other schools that have done the same kind of survey so that they can show you a basis of comparison about, well, this school is doing it this way, this could help solve your problem.
So in reviewing this more, because I think my initial, when we all looked at the line item on the LCAP and saw, roughly this number, I was like, that's a lot for a focus group, right? Understanding now what's in this, I think it's much more justifiable. That said, given the uncertainty around what is going to happen with our budget, can I ask that we just push this off one meeting? Is that going to impact your timeline considerably?
That makes sense to me.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. But I do think this is like a number that now makes sense to me now that I understand a little bit more about what we're getting. Because if it had just been focus groups, I would have been like, guys, we need a different vendor. And I want to get the contextual research for what other folks are doing in this area. I think that matters. And I think it goes beyond, some of the criticism that we've gotten around like, well, why are you doing focus groups? We know it's not working, right? Well, that's not... We don't have
data.
We don't have data, and we don't have the expertise in-house to say, here are all of the different things that other folks are doing.
That's right.
And kind of helping us build a plan, right? Like we're lean right now. And so that juice might be worth the squeeze. But I would say, since this is not part of kind of the required kind of third-party verified data that we need for a number of funding sources, I would like to push it one more meeting just to kind of see where we're at.
Yeah, I'm
Thanks.
comfortable with that. Dr. Agakani and Ms. Tabith, are you guys okay with pushing it one meeting? Okay, so
Thank
then
you.
can we bring it back to on the next agenda? Excellent. We are going to move to 14, reports from board members. 14A, does anyone have anything to share? I do. Ahem. I just wanted to do a couple of thank yous. So I wanted to thank Friends of the Burbank Public Library and Louise, who is the current president, chair, I don't know what you'd call it. August 3rd, they're doing a back-to-school book sale, but they have graciously and generously allowed the first hour from 11 to 12 for just BUSD staff. So they heard my pleas. So that means anybody with a Burbank Unified badge who wants to buy books for their classroom, their library, their whatever, It will just be us for that first hour, and then it opens up to the public for an additional few hours. So it's K through 12 books. So a huge thank you to them for doing that. They did not have to. It's all volunteer run. I wanted to thank all the principals who let me sit in and learn with them at the Principals Institute, and everybody for facilitating what I thought was like really great days of learning. I had a really interesting meeting today with the Burbank Tenants Union to talk about the impact of affordable housing or lack thereof on Burbank Unified. It was a really great conversation, and I look forward to many more. A lot of the people in that organization are parents in Burbank Unified, and spoke at length about how they were forced to move multiple times because they were forcibly evicted without any notice. There's no protections for that, and their fight to stay in Burbank so that their kiddos could continue their education. So I'm appreciative to them for their investment in us, and look forward to future conversations. I also wanted to thank Ms. Tabbitt. It's been a board meeting since we went to the Realtors. No? Did we already go?
Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks again, guys. And I think that's all I have. Yes. Anybody else? So thank you to everybody for that. And also, I don't know if I said it, but I went to Washington's Child Care Center pre-K graduation, and it was magnificent. Their tiny heads could not support the mortarboards. So it was like they did like 12 songs, and they like ran to the side because they were like leaning, and then the moms picked them, and it was great. So thank you for the invitation. It was a ton of fun. Ms. Tabbitt?
Yes, I wanted to talk about the scrumptious breakfast that we went to. The food was good. I mean, it's hard to do a good breakfast, right? That the Realtors Association put on for our 18 Burbank students. Some went to Providence, but they were Burbank students, including
All of our board members.
all three board members won a scholarship, but also 3 students from Monterey High School
What?
also won scholarships.
Yes.
Ranging from $500 to $2,500.
It was
across the
really
board.
pride. Full of pride.
It is phenomenal. And we greatly appreciate it. Our students deserve that recognition. They work hard, and we appreciate our realtors in town
So much.
who always support our schools and our students, and it's greatly appreciated. So
Yeah.
anyway, it was a fun
It was fun.
time. And as I said, the food was good too.
Pancakes
So,
were delicious.
yes, thank you to Cynthia Wagner for
Yes.
putting that on. And there we go. I feel like a lot has happened, but it's all that graduation
Yeah.
stuff. That takes a big part of our time, and it was certainly enjoyable. So
Agreed. Glad we got to go together. A sponsor camp car.
Thank you. Just to reiterate, unless we change the meeting for July, which we may do, I will not be here for most of July.
We'll miss
I'll
you.
be hanging out with my mom and my kids in Minnesota. But
That sounds
we'll
humid.
be back for the beginning of the school year and to work on fun bond stuff.
Woo!
And all of that good stuff. So, yep, you know where to find me, all of you.
Thank you.
Where?
First, let me start by wishing everyone a happy Father's Day. We just, we have a lot of, yeah. Thank you. Did we? Yeah, we did. We called you goddesses and brought you I delivered gifts to you.
Yeah, that violated something in the Constitution, I think.
Did it?
Continue.
And it is, again, as some of you know, it's been a difficult year for me, passing on my father. I am proud to say that we did give out 2 scholarships at East LA College in honor of my father. If any of you ever get a chance to attend any of these scholarship events, you should. These students are deserving, and any kind of a scholarship out there, whether Burbank, Realtors, it doesn't matter. It helps our students. I do want to mention one thing. I did go to the Glendale Community College Buena Vista building ribbon cutting. They're one of our biggest feeders. Now, for any of the students out there, this is the going to be the biggest state-of-the-art center for science, biology, medicine, and so forth. It's gigantic. So thank you, Glendale College, for being a great partner of ours. And now this is another added program that we can work directly with them. But it was wonderful to see some of our colleagues from other districts. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to adjourn in the memory of Ron Morris at 8:29 p.m.